Well, welcome back. So always in part 3, so the third episode in particular, this is the content we saw in subpart. We essentially saw the installations. Now we see subpart B, where we will see other installations, not of the operating system, but of the software that must be within the operating system for our needs. Very well. Then, let's resume from where we left off. You see that Linux has come to a conclusion. Now, here you see that it appears in gray like this, because this is another thing I wanted to show you. If I want, for example, you see I can pause it. This gray means that it's paused. I, for example, do this to remove the pause state, and it goes back exactly as it was originally. It can serve some purposes. Plus, with VirtualBox, you can also clone virtual machines to make copies. And naturally, for example, if I have this machine here, I could potentially, obviously first I have to turn it off, and then I do export appliance. And in this way, I could get an OVA file ready. So as I was telling you, for example, for educational purposes, or also for production, or for any reason, I could create a machine when it is ready, finished, and ready for everything I need. I can create the file .baya. Naturally, be careful of the licensing issues, because naturally, with Linux there is no problem. But with Windows, this obviously cannot be done. This is an exception, because Microsoft provides this virtual machine explicitly for testing purposes. So here, we have no problems. Now therefore, we are basically ready here. So we are at the same point as before. So I click, then I write test as the password, because I had chosen that as the password. So we can proceed from here. Now we essentially need to install the software. What software do I mean? Well, the basic parts of the operating system. Basically what we need. Now you see here, it's finishing the very last parts of the installation, giving me a sort of tutorial. I click next a couple of times without much interest. Okay, so here we're all set, and so here we're all set. Then the important thing to do for Linux that we've already done. So let's do one thing. Let's put this on pause for a moment to use less CPU. Now let's first check that the device is all set. You see the network is all set. Let's go. Look at it from the other side. Oh well, let's try it then. Let's try to make it full screen. Let's see if everything is all right. There too, as previously host Moref. Okay, it worked. So this means we've fixed everything now. At this point, I would try, you see, I can go down, or alternatively, the host key, which is right control plus F. And I'm back to the previous situation. I want to try installing the guest editions that I need, as I was saying, for copy and paste, etc. For Windows, we've already installed it. You see that in the meantime, it is trying to install all the upgrades too, but it's not the time. So we do devices, insert guest editions. The principle is the same. That is a fake virtual disk is inserted. So I click run. Then it also asks me for the password. Hit after that. Actually here the situation is a little different, but everything is still similar to that of Windows. So it takes this code and goes to patch the kernel, meaning it adds this code to the kernel of the operating system, meaning to the operating system itself, so that the operating system running within the virtual machine can communicate with. So in the guest system, it can communicate with the host system, that is the physical laptop, the real computer. You see that it has finished. It tells me press return to close this window. I press return. And so in theory, I should be all set here. So now let's try here as well. Let's see if I can manage the little game. So now here, we do something here. Well, anyway, let's say it should work. Let's try to send it back to full screen. Okay, perfect. I'd say everything is fine. So at this point, I'd say, let's do a nice thing. So here, we can close this. There's no need to save this thing. Then here, you see that I have more than one. I take the Windows virtual machine, put it here. Then I go here and remove the pause state. And I also remove this because I'm not interested. I don't save it. And then I run it all. Just kidding. With the same mechanism as before. Okay? So this means now here it should readjust. Anyway, full screen. So at this point, I should find myself with you. See here, if I scroll my screens, well, this is the webcam. And then here I have my Firefox. And then here I have Linux in the virtual machine. And here I have Windows in the virtual machine. Very well. So at this point, the first thing we need to do inside the Windows machine is download Firefox. Firefox, because for example, it can be useful for Snap, but it can generally be useful because let's say that the Edge browser is not very good for certain things. So Firefox is better. At least I prefer Firefox. So we'll pause here for a moment. Here we write Firefox. You see that it's searching using Bing as the search engine and not Google, because obviously it's owned by Microsoft. Now it searches, you see download. Great, it found download now. See that we are on mozilla.org, so download now. And now it should actually download the file. You see save, I click save, okay. And then I do more downloads. See, now it's downloading. Done, let's start it. While this proceeds, let's go to the other side. Sorry, this is the BS. Okay, you see that we get there now. Here's a nice error. Okay, now installing. Unfortunately, the world of computing should consist of perfectly repeatable things, but unfortunately, it is not so. Anyway, you see that it is installing. Okay, so it's starting the installation part. So let's go back to our Linux and proceed with some installations here as well. Basically, we need to install code.blocks and Python on Windows and Linux because we need them to show you. I need them to show you in the next episode the programs we have seen so far, both in C and in Python, and that we have seen in Snap. Okay, so first of all, here we open the equivalent of the command line. Of the command line, we write inside here terminal. Okay, you see that it opens a terminal for me. So if you want, if it's a bit too small, you just need to do control and plus. You see it increases the fonts a little bit. Okay, now we will see this later in the C part, but for now let's just focus on the installation. Okay, so to perform the installation you use a typical Ubuntu command, so there is no need to create too many problems. Sorry, I just want to see if Windows is proceeding. Yes, it is proceeding. So you use a command that is apt install and then the name. Okay, in this case the first thing I need to install is the compiler. GCC stands for new C compiler. Okay, the problem is that here I am, the test user, and the test user is one that does not have special privileges, while to install on modern operating systems you need to be the system administrator. Therefore, if you see I do this, you see that it tells me I don't have permissions, permission denied. So you see then it says, are you root? Okay, this is because under Unix, the system administrator, who under Windows is called administrator, is called root. So in this case, you need to either become root or give the command in this way, sudo where sudo stands for super user do, meaning do as if you were a super user. Okay? You might say yes, but is it enough to do something like this? To become root yes and no? In the sense that now if I press enter, I am effectively root. But to do it, I have to use a procedure called self-authentication, which works well for a whole series of reasons that we cannot see here. So I enter the password, which was test. And then you see that at this point, I download the GCC. You see that the GCC is 73 megabytes. If I now press enter, it takes the default yes, because it is the capital one. Okay, now we let it download here, and here it is done. Well, this has finished. So this was the browser, and it also started, but I am not interested in this case. Close tabs, that's it, and we can close it. Close all, perfect, very good. You see here we have Firefox installed. If I go here, you see I can say use Firefox, my default browser. We're okay now, we're okay here. Here is the antivirus system that did not approve. Well, let's start losing. Well, let's go somewhere else. Okay, that's better. Okay, so here we have completed the compilation. Sorry, the installation of GCC. And if I type GCC, enter, and you see that it complains saying there are no input files, meaning the compilation didn't work because there's nothing to compile. That is, there's no written program in C to transform. In the first episode, we saw the little program in Snap, then we saw the little program in C, and the little program in Python. The program in Python was then launched in a somewhat particular way because Python is an interpreted language. The small program in C was compiled using code blocks, which uses GCC. I then launched it without taking too much time in between. Now we are installing the compiler that is needed to perform the compilation. In particular, if you want to install CodeBlocks on Linux, you first need to install GCC because CodeBlocks on Linux does not have the compiler itself. Let's return here. This is still processing, all right? So let's move forward so we don't waste time. At this point, I would like to install here first things related to these terminals. So if I use the cursor keys, so up, down, right, left, then for example, if I use the up key, I retrieve the last command. If I use the up key again, the second to last, and so on. Okay? If I use the down key, I go down, then right and left, naturally move me up and down on the command line. Okay? Then we will see better how to use it. However, I don't just want to install GCC, but also G++, which is basically the C++ compiler, because later in the last episode, I want to show you something very quickly about C++. So let's also install G++. This also takes its time to install. Okay, let's see. If this is the right time, we can close this. And then here, you see, Mozilla Crash Reporter. So it means that Mozilla, that is Firefox, has crashed. We are sorry, the problem has crashed. You see, here it says, tell Mozilla, which basically means to report this thing, but I would prefer to avoid it. Let's quit Firefox. Now let's try to relaunch it. Let's see if this time it works. Let's do it this way. And off we go. You see that there are always a few small uncertainties, but we'll make it. Oh my, how much patience. We are sorry, but I am sorry too. So, come on, maybe we did it. So, what do we need to install here under Windows? As I told you, the first thing we need to install, apart from Firefox, is CodeBlocks. So I write CodeBlocks, enter. Here we are, you see, CodeBlocks. Very well. I'll just go to the other side for a moment to see how it's going. Perfect. So here it's finished. If I do G++, I press enter. You see it's working. So this has started correctly. Good. Then let's go to Windows. I remind you that both Windows and Linux are actually guest virtual machines running on Lost, which is my laptop, which is also a Windows. Well, let's go ahead and install code blocks. To do this, we need to download the code. So you see here, there is the introductory page, so to speak. But I go, sorry, it's very slow here. I go into downloads. Okay, we're almost there. Just a moment of patience. Very well then. We are interested in the binary releases because code blocks, if you want. You can also download the source code, written in C. However, we only need the binary release, so click with the left mouse button on top. Okay, great. At this point, we need to download the software. You see that we have a certain series of choices. Okay, the version is always 17.12, so these are all for Windows. So you see that we have a few choices. The version you need to download is exactly this one. Be careful not to make a mistake. Okay, exactly this. Unfortunately, every year it happens that there are people who download other versions and then have problems because the other versions are usually simply without the compiler, and clearly code blocks without the compiler goes nowhere. The version with the compiler is the one with Minghu in its name. This is indeed with the compiler, but a little different, leave it alone. And this one has Fortran inside for those who need it. So you have to download this version. So you can download it from here or from here. Okay, let's download it from here. I clicked. Let's go see on the other side how. Actually, no. Let's wait a moment. Here, unfortunately, here, it always takes a bit of time. Okay, fine. Now the download should start. Now in the meantime, maybe I'll go to the other side. You see that here he is. Here we are. So I want to save the file. I do save file. You see that at this point it is downloading. It has to download 86 megabytes. It downloads about 1 megabyte per second. So we do it fairly quickly. While it downloads, I go over here and do something else. So what else do I need to install? So I would like to install, to start with, you see I move the cursor up like this. I don't have to rewrite everything. So I would like to install an object called NetTools. This is needed because later I would like to show you some interesting little things about the network, and I need some little programs that are inside this package called NetTools. So let's install this. Okay. You see, this is more compact. In the meantime, I'll go to the other side. Let's see how the situation is. Okay, we are making good progress. Good. So we've downloaded NetTools. Then we said I also have to install another program called Nmap, which I will explain later what it's for, also for network purposes. Let's go to the other side. Okay, I would say there are a few seconds left. Okay, it's done. Very well. Let's install it then. Double click and we can install it. So let's see if it started. Yes, it started. Well, oh no, another error. Let's try again. So let's take this file, copy it here. Then we recognize this one. We'll put this here and try to run it separately. Let's see what happens. I'll try again. All right then, let's download it again. Let's pretend nothing happened. All right, let's go back here. Let's redo everything. Let's do it first.
Rifacciamo tutto. Facciamo prima.
My goodness, what slowness? Okay, we've got it. So I was saying that the version you absolutely must not get wrong is this one here. Let's try downloading it from here. Maybe it's faster. Okay, save a file. In the meantime, we'll delete this. It should be considered as a partial excuse that, as I was telling you, at the moment there are 3 operating systems running on the computer, plus the recording software, plus the webcam, plus the microphone. In short, it's a bit overloaded, quite loaded indeed. So here, this is downloading. Good. Let's go to the other side. Perfect. So the last thing we installed is the Nmap. Well, from this side, at this point, we still have one more thing we need, OpenServer, which will always be used to show you some things later. Okay? Yes? Let's go to the other side. Let's see how it's going. Okay, it's downloading. You see that from this repository, it seems to download faster. Let's go to Linux. I obviously alternate between the 2 systems in order to make the most of the downtime. Unfortunately, bear with me, but as you can see, installing programs never goes completely smoothly. There's always something that doesn't go as planned, and it takes a lot of patience. As refined as all this is. Okay, so SSH is there, and it's fine. And now, so keep in mind that under Linux Python is already there. If I type pi and then press the tab key a couple of times, you see that here we have all the various possibilities, and in particular Python 3. So I write da Python 3 enter, and you see that Python 3.6.7 has started. If I want to exit, I type quit, open and close parentheses, and we're good. Okay, so Python, we're good. So from this point, I just need code blocks. Okay, so I can install it with the same system. I start the installation, 42 megabytes, let it install. Meanwhile, I go to the other side. Okay, so here it seems to have worked. I take it and put it here. Let's see if this time it goes better. So let's see, it doesn't work. Let's try once more. After that, we'll take another type of measure. You see, these are classic things that shouldn't happen. So, what do you do in these cases? It seems to me that the best thing I can do is turn off the computer and restart it. A typical computing thing that typically shouldn't be done. In fact, you see that something happened here. Not sure what, but something happened. Meanwhile, he finished the installation. Okay, so essentially what I'm missing. Now let's see how this works. Now it's doing a shutdown. Okay, it has shut down. So if I press 4 keys up, I go here, there it is. Good. So you see that Windows 10 has been shut down. We'll restart it. Let's see if this time it will be more cooperative. I switch. It puts it in full screen. So essentially now we still need to compile our first test program in code blocks with Linux. We have seen that Python works under Linux, and then we have to install code blocks and try it under Windows, and then install Python and also try Python under Linux. Okay, so here we press the host key, which is Ctrl+F. Okay, so here we do password 0 RD exclamation point. Perfect. So you see here there's this. Let's try to double click on it. Let's see if this time it works better for us. There's probably some problem here. Okay.
Okay.
It asks for our permission. We grant it. Okay. All right. Okay. Welcome to Next. Okay. Okay. Polento. But patience, time. Let's try to do some cleaning here. Better not? Then let's move this window to the other side. Okay. Here I would say to do, well, let's go here. Here we are finally. Now this one here, I'd say that if it stops bothering me, it's only retained. Not now. Let's leave it alone. Instead, we have this. So here I just want to say, I agree. Okay. Such patience. Okay, so here this is proceeding. Okay, maybe we're there. So you see that here I clicked I agree on the license request. So I simply click next here. There's nothing special to do. This is the path where it will install for me. You see it is 253 megabytes. Install. You see it's now installing code blocks. You can see it's starting to show me the icon. Now while it installs code blocks, hoping this time it succeeds, I go over here and try from Linux. So I type code blocks, write code, press tab. You see it gives me two options, blocks and page. I'm interested in code blocks, so I add B, press tab again, and it expands to code blocks. I press enter and it starts. Here we are. So you see it says I need the compiler. Which compiler? You see that GCC detected because we installed the GCC before installing code blocks, so we have no problem. So I click there, then I press OK. It starts. Done. This is the code blocks interface that you normally see and use in the computer science course when doing C, working on C. So what do? File, new, project. What type of project? Console application, go. We can click next, then language C. Next. Title, we can call it first. However, you see, here it says folder to create project in, meaning the directory where to place the project. So here it's not available, it's not right, so we press up here, always with the left button, and it tells me where I can try. But for example, on the desktop, I'm interested in the desktop, so we can see it. We click open. And here we are. You see that at this point, this is the complete path. You see, home test is the username, desktop is his desktop, Primo is the directory name, as well as the project name, and primo.cpp is the file that contains the CPP. It stands for Code Block Project. So we click next. At this point, it asks me, are you sure you want to use the GCC compiler? Yes, of course. So finish, done, in the sense that this way we have created a project, and Code Blocks, when it starts, creates a small, very simple default project from which we can then start during the course to create more complicated programs. So if I click here, then you see here, main.c is the program. I double click and you see it opens it here. This is the program. This program is extremely simple. So for you to create other programs, you'll simply have to, for example, go here and write things, add things. Now this program is very simple and is essentially the skeleton. So let's try to compile it. That is, transform it into an executable program. I go to this icon here where it says build. I press the icon and you see that it tells me below that it has finished compiling. 0 errors, 0 warnings, and in 0 seconds. In short, it was very fast. It's a very simple program. If you compare this very simple little program with the one we had seen, just a bit more complicated, if from the first lesson that served as an example, you will see that there are some additional things because this only does output. The little program we had made had input, processing, where the processing consisted of adding 5 to a variable, and then output, that is printing something. So now we have compiled it, we can run it. You see that the result is very similar to what we got when running the program during the first episode. You see that it tells me press enter to continue. I click in the window and then I press enter and the window disappears. At this point, we have completed our first program. So here we have the fully functioning Linux system. So here, do I want to save it? No. So we have a system that in addition to a whole series of other things we have installed, which will be useful later in part 3C, in the C part of the third part, we have installed Code Blocks and Python perfectly functioning. Let's go to the other side. Let's see. Here you see, do I want to run Code Blocks now? Yes. Now let's see if everything starts correctly. Let's hope so. Okay, you see, here too it tells me compiler detected. In this case, be careful. If you hadn't downloaded the version with MinGW written in the file name, by now it would not have found the compiler and you would have been left hanging. So we click OK here. Perfect, we're there. Then here he says, okay, now for convenience, I would say we can put it on full screen here, so it's a bit more comfortable. Hopefully nothing happens. Perfect. Everything worked well. Oh, very well. At this point, we do exactly as before. File. Note that if I want to create a new project, I can also do it from here. It's exactly the same thing. Actually, I first say open new project. Exactly the same thing. I do console application go. Then just like before here, it's fine. Then here we choose C. C next. Then here we also put here, we call it first. Same problem. You see invalid path. So I have to click here. It shows me the path. And you see that in this case, I want the desktop. So EA user desktop. Okay. EA user desktop. You see it writes desktop. I click. Okay. The interface is different from Linux, but the concept is obviously the same. You see, it tells me that the folder will be created inside and the folder will be named Primo because it is the name of the project. And the project name is effectively primo.cpp, where CPP, as I said before, is Code Blocks project. So we click next. It asks for confirmation. All right, it ends exactly as before. I click here, then double click here. You see that here I have the exact same program as before. If I want to be sure everything works, I click here. Notice that I have build here, but if I want, I also have it here. Same thing. Let's try here. Build You see it's now compiling the program. You see it compiled it correctly. It's good. We're all set. We want to run it. You see I have it here run, but if I want, I also have it here run. And okay, you see here, it's the same thing as before. It obviously shows the same thing, and then I click inside, then I press any key, any button, the space bar, and we're good. If I now click File Quit, I exit from here. Do you want to save it? No. Okay, here I'm not really sure what this does. Finish. Okay, we're good. This was the executable file of code blocks. We can easily delete it with the right click since we don't need it anymore. Here it is. Delete OK. I remind you that everything you delete goes to the recycle bin, so it is not permanently deleted until you right click and then empty recycle bin. Okay, so we have sorted that out. We still need to install Python, so we need to reopen Firefox. Then in here we search for Python. Okay, let's skip a bit. Okay, download Python directly without overcomplicating. You see download latest version for Windows because it recognized when the browser connected that this was a Windows operating system, and it offers me the download of the version for Windows. I do like this. You see it tells me it's 24 gigabytes save file. Okay, and then at this point it is here. So it is downloading. Okay, in the meantime Linux is fine on the other side. So I would say since it's fine for now, I would do this. Just to start, I would exit full screen. Okay, so I would remove the full screen. Okay, you see it is no longer full screen, and at this point, as I told you before, I put it on pause. Pause means it is a bit like when you close the laptop and just leave it like that. It's all fixed, all freeze. Okay, let's come back to this side. This is done. Let's see if we can start it without further difficulties. All right, you see install launcher for all users. So not just for the user, in this case who was called EA user or something like that, but for everyone. Also, I would add the Python 3.7 to the path, so we are sure everything works. Now let's click install now. It will ask me for authorization, and we manage. Now we take it and place it here. Let's see if it goes a bit better. Let's go like this. Darn it, today it decided to get on my nerves. Well then, let's try again. Let's download it again. Yes, I know. All right, let's do it this way. Notice that in this case, what is causing issues is the Windows permissions control system. You see here, one or more arguments are invalid, but this thing is not going very well. Then let's do one thing. Let's do it over here. This is not relevant to me, so let's go here. Here we are. This is Windows User, Files. Here it is, Executable Installer. Yes, it should be this one, because this Windows. Note that here we have a 64-bit operating system. So let's download this one. Save file. Normally there aren't these problems. I think it's also due to the fact that we're running a few too many things together. So let's see. This is a slightly different version, but this one should work too. So here we go. Okay, let's try. Let's put it here. See, nothing to do, fine. Then I already understand that I have to solve this in some other way. Let's make one last attempt. This thing is really incredible then. Listen, let's cut to the chase. Let's take this version here, which is not the latest, and see if it works just the same. But listen, let's try to do as we did before, which is not elegant, but it might work, because I have the impression that all this is due to system overload. So let's do a shutdown. Then we shut down the virtual machine. Okay, we already have this one turned off. You see that Windows 10 is still running. This one is on pause. Okay, now we wait for it to shut down here. Maybe we'll do Ctrl F so it goes into a window. Okay, at this point, since I'm a bit fed up, let's do it like this. Let's see if it works. And if it doesn't work, we'll use strong measures. All right, I'm fed up. Let's use forceful measures. Well, so you've seen something that shouldn't be part of the tutorial, but apparently is. Okay, let's restart our virtual machine. So normally these kinds of problems don't happen, but it's also true that we have a very complicated environment. Let's say that it shouldn't happen. So let's restart it. I would like to complete this part. So we'll complete part 3B and wrap up. Let's make one long. And here we are. Click up here. Pass W0 exclamation point with a capital P away. Notice that I first powered off the machine. Power off means it's the same as if I went to the physical computer and brutally cut the power. So it's something absolutely not to do, except in emergencies, because when one cuts the power to the computer, the hard disk containing the operating system and everything we have is, let's say, a little mistreated. So when the computer restarts, it tries to piece things back together and might not succeed, which means it might not return to its previous state. This almost never happens, but it was just to tell you to be careful, because it could, you know, if it can be avoided, it's a gain. Oh, this time we made it. So you see that the issue was in the Windows verification and authentication system, which for some reason had decided that it wasn't advisable to install Python. So now we are installing it anyway. Then we will check Now here I dared to go full screen, so at least we are comfortable. Now, if you remember under Linux to test Python, we opened the terminal, then we typed Python 3, enter, and then we closed by doing quit, open, close, parenthesis. Here we have to do the same thing, but we have to do it from a command line terminal. Maybe I'll take a chance and start writing CMD in here, no? Enter, and it opens a command line terminal for me. In the meantime, it is continuing to install. Now let's see if it works. Theoretically, it shouldn't work here yet because we opened it before the installation finished. But just to show, you see, add to path, well, was successful, close. So here to launch it, I should type py, enter, and function. Worked, okay? So now to exit, I type quit, open, close. This is due to the fact that I rebooted, but the keyboard was English. If I switch to the Italian keyboard, now it's the Italian keyboard, and I do this, and we're all set, okay? So at this point, I press Ctrl F, minimize it, and then do machine pause, so that both machines are paused. Well, let's say that with this, we have finished part 3b, and we'll see each other shortly for part 3c.